On the 1st of October 1504, Giovanna Feltria della Rovere, of the rising Urbino family, wrote to the Gonfaloniere of Florence, Pier Soderini, to recommend the 21-year-old Raphael who wanted to study Tuscan Renaissance art. Raphael quickly mastered the limpid rhythms of Brunelleschi's architecture, the serene geometry of Leon Battista Alberti, and the nobility of Donatello. The work which best embodies the strongest political and civil ambitions of the Florentine Republic is the David, Michelangelo's monumental masterpiece, which was erected outside the Palazzo Vecchio just before Raphael arrived in Florence. In the most solemn chamber of that same building, Raphael witnessed the confrontation between Leonardo and Michelangelo, who were then engaged in creating two battle scenes, both of which have sadly since been lost to history. One was a clash between mounted horsemen, and the other a study of very virile and athletic nudes, both executed under the artistic policy dictated by Pier Soderini. Michelangelo, then almost 30 years old, was the most convincing heir to the Florentine tradition of drawing and figure painting. With the tondo doni, he introduced the plastic solidity of a group of figures, which marked quite a departure from Leonardo's sfumato style. Having returned from a long sojourn at the court of the Sforzas in Milan, Leonardo was now introducing a new sensitivity to light, movement, and portraiture to Florence. The 50-year-old master, who was then painting the Mona Lisa, became a reference point for Raphael's first years in Florence, due to his talent for capturing the fleeting expression which reveals the very soul of the sitter. Young, handsome, inspired, and perfectly educated in the etiquette of the intellectual courtier, Raphael quickly rose up the ladder of success. He was welcomed into the palaces of all the great families of Florence, for whom he executed small collection paintings and unforgettable portraits, preserved in part in the Palazzo Pitti at Florence. One example of such patrons is the couple who also commissioned the tondo doni from Michelangelo, Agnolo Doni and Maddalena Strozzi. His busts of mysterious, attractive ladies show hints of Leonardo's approach. The expectant mother was, for the very first time, set against a black background, and the wonderfully elegant, gentle woman with unicorn, where the unicorn, a symbol of purity, is held as if it were a cat. Most especially the enigmatic and extraordinary lady with the tightly shut mouth, traditionally known as La Muta, exhibited in the Palazzo Ducale at Urbino, where the secret language of expression, detail, jewelry, and clothing has yet to be deciphered. Raphael began work on an exceptional series of Madonnas, painted on wood for the same Florentine families, all of whom were highly informed and sophisticated with regard to art. In their movingly beautiful natural and calming smiles, Raphael draws us into an extraordinary series of variations on the most famous and popular theme in the history of painting. One after another, Raphael's Madonnas added to a gallery of enchantment, tiny gestures, knowing smiles, and delicate tendernesses, as well as demonstrating his exceptional skill at producing increasingly complex poses, groups, landscapes, light, and situations. Raphael brought his busy Florentine period to a brusque end with the unfinished, quivering, and completely new Madonna del Baldacchino for the Basilica of Santo Spirito. The sunny sweetness of the Madonnas painted by Raphael when he was about 24 years old cracked in the tense climate of battles and quarrels which were breaking out in Perugia. There was a power struggle going on between the members of the Baglioni family, which became so bitter it bordered on outright civil war. Griffonetto, stabbed to death by his relatives, paid the price with his life. His grieving mother was inconsolable and commissioned Raphael to depict her terrible torment. Thus, the transportation of the dead Christ was painted for the Church of San Francesco, although it now hangs in the Galleria Borghese in Rome. For this work, Raphael created a complex scene in which a whole range of references to the classical statues is combined with the drama of the moment. Departing once more from Perugino's style, Raphael came up with a new and very intense piece, which captures the height of the tragedy with the Madonna fainting. Still in Perugia, Raphael returned to fresco work in the oratory beside the monastery church of San Severo, and painted the Trinity surrounded by a half-circle of saints seated on clouds in the upper part of a lunette. Several years later, Perugino, now clearly outstripped by his pupil, added the 6 standing saints lower down. Even though badly preserved, the fresco in San Severo is considered the trial run for the new commissions that Raphael was about to undertake in Rome, where the Renaissance truly flourished at its height. Raphael arrived in Rome in 1508 at the age of 25. The Eternal City revealed to him all of the glories of antiquity and the huge modern constructions carried out under the control of the Urbino-born artist Bramante. At that time, Julius II, one of the greatest, most energetic and controversial popes in history, was on the throne. He was the pope who began rebuilding St. Peter's and commissioned Michelangelo to paint the Sistine Chapel. He also asked Raphael to decorate his private apartments in the Vatican. The Raphael stanze were begun in 1508 and finished after the painter's death. They are one of the most moving series of apartments in the world. When Raphael arrived in Rome, several famous artists had already spent years working on the papal apartments. Julius II recognized the great talent of the young painter and, in a typically imperious gesture, had all of the newly completed work destroyed and left its replacement entirely in the hands of Raphael. The first room, or stanza, had once been the Pope's private study. On the wall, destined for books of theology, Raphael painted the huge, grandiose Disputation of the Sacrament. In the light of a sunny morning in the Roman landscape, a double semicircle of saints and theologians are arranged around the central peaceful figure of Christ and the altar on which the monstrance rests. On the wall devoted to philosophical works, we find the School of Athens. Beneath the large vaults of the Temple of Wisdom, Plato and Aristotle lead a group of ancient philosophers. Plato, an idealized portrait of Leonardo, is pointing towards the heavens, while Aristotle indicates the earth. All around, in a huge range of poses, expressions, and gestures, we have one of the most vibrant and complex groups of characters from the history of art ever painted. There are some other famous faces in there too. Michelangelo is the scowling, solitary Heraclitus. Bramante is represented as Euclid, with his compass in hand. Raphael himself appears half hidden, his face pale and thin, with still a trace of adolescence about it. For the works of poetry, Raphael chose a view of Mount Parnassus, with the 9 muses, and Apollo is depicted playing the harp. It is almost as if Apollo is inviting the poets of all of the ages, crowned by laurels and magically evoked together in the Garden of Eternity, to dance. Raphael worked on the Stanza della Segnatura until 1511, and his fame grew with the years. He now boasted the busiest studio in all of Rome, with a whole generation of artists learning their trade alongside him and how to deal with increasingly complex projects. A comparison of the works completed during this period shows just how exceptionally varied Raphael's figurative language had become. He also received a very prestigious commission from Agostino Chigi. The incredibly rich Sienese banker had moved to Rome and built a beautiful villa on the banks of the river Tiber. This was to become known as the Villa Farnesina and was decorated by masters of the caliber of Baldassare Peruzzi, Sodoma, Sebastiano del Piombo. In 1511, inspired by the classical myths, Raphael painted a fresco of the Triumph of Galatea, a return in paint to an episode from Ovid's Metamorphoses. It depicts a scene of crystalline purity, an expression of Raphael's great love of the art and literature of antiquity, a balance of perfect creation and immediate seduction. Arranged on a shell drawn by dolphins, showered by arrows from the bows of smiling cupids, the beautiful nymph is turned towards Polyphemus, the rough sylvan giant, who is beside Sebastian. Again for Chigi, this time in the church of Santa Maria della Pace, a homage to Brunelleschi's ideals, Raphael painted a sequence of sibyls over an arch. These represented an example of rhythm linked by gestures and glances frescoed along a curved cornice. Raphael worked ceaselessly during this period. The Prothonotore Apostolical Rothmagen commissioned ambitious projects for the beautiful Renaissance church of Sant'Agostino. In the interior, Raphael pays open homage to Michelangelo by painting the prophet Isaiah on a pilaster supporting a marble group by Andrea Sansovino. He is depicted as an energetic individual with an intense, concentrated face who seems to have descended from the vaults of the Sistine Chapel, but is also softened by the presence of 2 delicate angels. Santa Maria in Araceli, high on the capital of Rome, was also once home to one of Raphael's great works, the Madonna of Foligno, painted in around 1511, and now residing in the Pinacoteca Vaticana. This is an ex voto monument of a cardinal whose house escaped damage when a meteorite fell on it. Although contemporary with the very classical Triumph of Galatea and the Michelangelo-inspired Isaiah, the altarpiece abounds with the landscape, color, and light of Venetian painting. Particularly famous for the detail of the 2 pensive angels leaning on the windowsill is the Sistine Madonna, which was originally housed in the church of San Sisto in Piacenza, but which had found its way to the Dresden Art Museum by the 1700s. The Virgin's face is reminiscent of that of one of Raphael's lovers, Margherita Luti, the daughter of a baker of Sionese origin. She became famous under the nickname of Fornarina.